Okay, welcome. I'm going to start again. Welcome. This is Martin Salama, the architect of the Warriors Life Code, life standing for live incredibly full every day. And I'm very excited today to have Laura Lane with me. Hi, Laura. How are you?
Good, Martin. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Laura. Laura specializes in providing loving, faith-based support for moms whose kids are fighting for their lives. Laura offers hope in a hopeless situation for caregivers who want to learn how to develop grace under pressure during the daily care of their child. As a professionally trained transformational workshop leader and cancer mom herself, she is there to support them along the way, help them learn needed skills and feel understood. Laura engages her audience in deep spiritual conversations that help bring more joy and gratitude and a closeness to God during the dark nights of the soul. It says so much right there. And we've spoken before, but I really felt such a connection when I spoke with you that last time that I said, oh, we got to get together and speak as soon as possible. So thank you so much for finding some time so that we can talk.
Thank you for this opportunity, Martin.
Okay. Well, so we met about a month or so ago on a collaboration of people looking to be on people's speaking platforms and stuff like that. And when we met one-on-one about a couple of weeks later, Laura, your story really touched me in so many ways. And so I want to ask you to start by telling me telling us what got you into this line of work, what brought you there, and so that people could understand where this unbelievable selflessness came from.
Well, going back 2011, my 12-year-old daughter, Celeste, she had been having some headaches that were waking her up in the middle of the night, which I personally can't imagine having a headache wake me up. And so she had a doctor's appointment, and the doctor sent her to the emergency. She had a CAT scan by 2 p.m. She had an MRI by dinner time, and she was in emergency neurosurgery by 9:30 at night.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we were launched literally into the world of childhood cancer in that one day.
Right. So the CAT scan and the MRI showed some cancer up there, and they said, we got to get this out as quick as possible.
Yeah. They said, there's a tumor there. We need to go, there's a mass. We need to go find out what it is. They did the initial surgery, relieve the pressure that was building up in her brain that was causing the incredible headaches and the double vision that had just started. And so they relieved that pressure on her brain. But they said, because the mass was at the very base of the skull, at the pineal gland, it was a very difficult spot to access. And so they said, we're going to have to do it again. So they then transferred us to Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. And fortunately, one of the top neurosurgeons in Canada and probably across the world, Dr. Drake, he was able to perform a second neurosurgery on her a week later and was able to get a biopsy of that tumor. It was not one that they could just simply go in and remove, but they were at least able to get a sample. And that came back with a diagnosis of pineoblastoma. Now, the chances of a child being diagnosed with pineoblastoma is 1 in 7 million.
Wow. So for the audience, can you give it a little bit more of a layman's term of what pineoblastoma is?
So it's a brain tumor that's sitting right on the pineal gland in the brain, and it's very rare, very rare.
7 million. Wow.
Yeah, there is only ever a handful of kids at one time who are diagnosed with pineoblastoma.
Wow. And
so we were launched into this whole world of childhood cancer. We were initially given a treatment plan. So St. Jude's Hospital in the States, who were absolutely amazing, they were the only ones who had a treatment plan for this type of tumor. And so she was put on a treatment of 30 rounds of high dose radiation,
Wow.
followed by 4 to 6 months of high dose chemotherapy and stem cell rescue.
Oh my gosh. This poor child.
So,
I mean, I know for my own family, I know my brother-in-law went through chemo and radiation, and this is a strong man who was just, it broke him. So I could imagine what it did. I mean,
yeah,
thank
it
God
was,
he survived, but it broke him.
Mhm.
It was really a tough thing. So
Yeah.
I can imagine what it was like for your 12-year-old.
it's really hard to watch a little girl go through this. She was so brave,
Hmm.
brave little thing. And each types of treatment, everybody's different on how they can handle it.
Right.
So she made it through her radiation, her 30 rounds,
Wow.
5 days a week. She was having radiation. She made it through her rounds, of course, lost her hair, didn't feel great, but she was still able to go to school every day.
Wow.
So she would go to school and have her radiation.
Hmm.
Like I said, she didn't feel great, but the next step was the high dose chemotherapy and stem cell rescue. Now, throughout this whole process, when I first learned that Celeste was diagnosed, I of course went into fear. And as adults, when we think of cancer, we think of everybody we've ever known with cancer, every experience that they have had that we've heard about, every news report, like all the statistics, we have all of that we're carrying with us with that one word, cancer.
Right, which is what I just did.
Right? Children, for the most part, have no preconceived notions of what cancer is.
Hmm. Right, because
For
it's a word we
them,
keep out of their
it's just
lexicon as long as possible.
right. And so when we had to describe to my daughter what is cancer, I realized I didn't want to take this loaded word that I had and give that to her.
Hmm.
And I looked at it and I said, what is cancer really? Well, cancer is just cells that are growing where they're not supposed to.
Right.
And that's what we told my daughter, was you just have some cells growing where they're not supposed to, and the doctor's going to do what they need to get rid of them. And at the same time, we asked her to focus on taking those cells. And I said, imagine an ice cube on the sidewalk. If you put an ice cube on the sidewalk and the sun rays come down and it warms up that ice cube, and it not only melts, but it evaporates.
Right.
And so I said to her, that's what I want you to focus on. I want you to focus on those cells, and we're all going to pray for the same thing. We're all going to pray that those cells are going to melt and evaporate, just like the sun melts and evaporates an ice cube.
Right.
And so it gave us something to focus on. One of the realizations I had immediately was what we were about to do. One of the fears is that it's too big for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I needed to be the best mommy I could ever be, the strongest mommy I could ever be. And that meant I couldn't do this alone, that this was too much for me to do by myself, and I needed help. And because I was doing this for the most important person in my life, I was willing to ask for help in ways that I never was willing to do for myself. So all the times that I knew I had baggage that I had been carrying around, that I kept saying, one day I will deal with that. All of a sudden, that baggage was going to be way too, it was going to be too much of a burden. I'm like, I'm willing to get rid of this now. Who can help me to get rid of my baggage so I can be strong and grounded and there for my daughter?
Right.
And I just started asking for help. I had just 4 months before Celeste was diagnosed, become a life success consultant with Bob Proctor, teaching his personal growth and development programs.
Wow.
He just had instilled in me in the previous year. What is fear? Fear is an absence of knowledge.
Oh, yes.
So every time I went into that fear, I kept saying, okay, well, what is it that I don't know?
Wow.
I don't know that I can be strong enough. I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to become strong enough? Who do I need to get help from? If I'm and when she was first diagnosed, I'm like, I don't want to go online and hear all kinds of scary stories about her particular type of diagnosis. I'm like, I'm not going to do that to myself. I just need to be strong and just stay away from all that literature and stuff that's out there. I don't want to hear horror stories. I don't want to know. That's like, that's not going to be good for me.
Right, right.
Well, a couple of months later, I get this nudge. It was almost a slap upside the head, really. It's like, Laura, go and look online. I'm like, no, I said I'm not going to do that because I know that's not, Laura, go look online. Just go and see what it's, no, I'm not going to do that. So I had this argument, of course, with God and he won. And so I finally went and looked. And so I Googled pineoblastoma. And the first thing I came across was a website created by another mom describing what pineoblastoma is, but she had a separate page for a listing of all the children who've ever been diagnosed because there are so few of them. She was able to list, okay, there's a 16-year-old boy who was diagnosed in 1986, and here's a 2-year-old diagnosed in 1992, and a 3, like, so there's all these kids. And I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm scrolling through this list. And as I'm going through this list, all of a sudden I see a listing for a little girl who's 12 years old, and she was diagnosed in February 2011. And my daughter Celeste went into the hospital in February 2011 when she was 12.
Right.
And like, there's another 12-year-old girl right now going through this with Celeste.
Wow.
And not only that, not only was she listed in here, but there was contact info. There was a website for her care pages. So I went to the website and I sent a little note to the family and said, hey, my daughter Celeste is going through this at the same time. Well, the other little girl, her name is Haley. And her mom's name is Lori.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I reached out to Lori and she reached back and she's like, oh my goodness, we've not met anyone else with the same diagnosis.
Right.
So we went from being complete strangers to best friends overnight.
Because nobody knows how you feel unless they know how you feel. Someone can say, I understand you, but they don't really.
Haley was on the exact same treatment, but because she was diagnosed at the beginning of the month and Celeste was diagnosed at the end of the month, we're just 1 month apart on their treatment plans.
Yeah.
So Haley was just one step ahead of us and could give us, like, Lori let us know what was coming.
This is what's happening next.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, God has a way of doing things to us. You know, even when we still think, no, I'm not going to do that. There's something God just seems to know what you need. And it was that you surrendering to God at that moment and saying, okay, I said I wasn't going to do this, but there must be a reason why I'm being pushed to do this right now. So, wow.
Yep. And then even more amazing was there were a Christian family who were praying for Haley and had people praying for her all over the world.
Right.
And we had people praying for Celeste all over the world. So when we found out that she was diagnosed, we messaged everybody. And with my connections through the trainings I had done, I literally knew people all over the world. And so we just said, can you please pray for Celeste and let us know who is and where they are? And every time I would get a message back, I would write it on a little sticky note. And I would put the sticky notes all around her hospital room.
Wow.
So she was literally surrounded by that love and prayers from all these people.
Right.
And Haley was doing something similar. They had a map of the world in her room, and they were putting pins for all the places in the world where people were praying for her.
And where were they located?
In New Jersey.
Oh, wow. my backyard.
Yeah. She was doing her treatments at CHOP in Philadelphia.
Right.
The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Yep. Wow.
So it was just incredible that we were brought together like this. And one day when Celeste was going through her treatments, I just got this inspiration that I needed to write, I needed to tell the world about these two little girls, that God had brought us together, and I needed to write a book about them. And when that happened, I just had this swoosh, this feeling that went right through my body, that I have to tell the world about these little girls.
Wow.
That just how amazing they are,
Right.
and how amazing people have been in supporting us. And so that became my focus, is everything that happened, I started to document. So the girls went through their chemotherapy. So, and that was really hard. On Celeste's third round, every round got harder for her. Haley was doing really well through, she had a hard time through radiation, but through chemo, she was managing quite well, and she was able to go home between months. But Celeste was never able to do that.
Right.
And on her third round, we almost lost her. Her blood pressure had dropped down to 0, and or very, very, very
Close
low.
to it. Yeah.
And they rushed us down to the ICU at the hospital there. And I remember that whole time when she was going through her treatments, I could feel the angels in the room supporting us. I could feel her angels there with us every day. And then the day that we got moved downstairs to the ICU, we're in a room with 4 other children who are in critical care.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I could feel all of their angels around each of their beds. And it was like, oh, this is a little much for me to be able to sense all of that. And then one of the doctors shortly afterwards realized, wait a second, this little girl has come out of isolation. She's just been going through her chemo. She can't be in the room with all these other kids.
Right.
So they separated us into another isolated room. And then it was all of a sudden like, okay, I can breathe again.
Right. You know, it's like that movie Angels in the Outfield, you know?
Yeah.
When you see the angels around.
Yeah.
You know why I'm getting emotional here.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, I've had a tragedy in my life, and we didn't know this when we first met. We started talking, we learned, and I told you about the loss of my brother when he was 5 years old, when he was killed by a school bus, and how that had an effect on me for the next 40 years in the things that I did, and how I reacted, and how I lived my life, because I became a people pleaser, because I felt like I was the only son left. I had to take care of my parents and so on and so forth. And for many years, people would accidentally, whether they knew my story or not, would call me my brother's name, Michael, because I'm Martin Michael. You know, it's this easy thing. And for years, I would shudder. And only about 10 years ago, I embraced the fact that when someone calls me Michael, it's God's way of telling me he's with me. You know, he's the angel that's there for me, in the room with me. So when you said that part just now, that's what I thought about. So continue, please.
Yeah. So we made it through that. The doctor said no more rounds. Her tumor at that point had shrunk 82%.
Wow.
And they said that how it works with the chemo and the radiation is it will continue to work as time goes on. And so she was able to go home and start doing school from home and preparing so she could go back to school in the new year.
Right.
And Haley did the same thing. So Haley finished her round. The girls left the hospital 3 days from each other.
Wow.
And then they were both into the same situation, homeschooling, or having a tutor coming in and helping them. And they both had to learn how to walk again.
Wow.
They had braces on their legs because of the vincristine drug that they were given as part of their chemotherapy. Does that, it tightens the tendons up in the foot so that they're not able to put their foot down all the way.
Right.
And so they both had to learn how to walk again and learn to run again, but they both went back to school. Celeste graduated grade 8 with awards, achievement awards, and honors that even though she had lost all that time, she was still able to graduate from grade 8. Haley was the same thing, just amazing little girls.
Right.
So they're recovering, and I had this dream, this desire to write a book, this inspiration that I needed to write a book. So now I started focusing on it, taking all of the notes from when the girls were going through their treatments and started putting that together. I studied with Marcy Scheimoff and Janet Atwood, who are New York Times bestselling authors. And so they could teach me, what do I need to do to write a book? And I set a goal. I was going to finish my book by December 2012. And
Wow.
I'm like, I can do this. I've got all of it here. I can do this. Well, that summer, Celeste was able to graduate. She did her school trips, and I was able to go with her. She went to girls' camp. She went. She had some acting lessons. She had a phenomenal summer. And she had her next MRI. And when that came back, so we're totally expecting. Haley had her last MRI, said she had no evidence of disease, her NED.
Wow.
So the tumors were all gone. And Celeste's tumors were at 98.5%. So we're like, okay, this next round of MRI, it's going to be gone. We're going to get our wonderful news that we've been praying for. And so the doctor gives me a call afterwards and says, I'm sorry, but we've found more spots.
Oh no.
And I'm like, no.
No,
We're supposed to get our evidence of disease. That's not the part of the plan here. And I immediately just went into fear. Like, no, this is not part of the plan. And I'm like, okay, then that means we just need to pray more and we need to do more. And the doctors were not offering another treatment. So I'm like, well, then we'll just go somewhere else. We'll just go to Mexico or Europe or wherever we have to go. We'll just do more. And then all of a sudden I had this realization, this feeling that came over me, that as much as I was willing to do anything in the whole world for my little girl, it wasn't my fight.
Right.
That this was up to Celeste.
Right.
She was the one doing the hard stuff. She was the one in the ring.
It's her decision what happens next.
And I
Even
realized
at 12, 13, 14 years old, they're the ones that have to make these decisions. It's on them. It's about them.
And so I looked at my little girl and realized if she wanted to fight this, we would fight this. But if she felt like she couldn't do this anymore, that was okay too.
Right.
We would just simply make every day she had left wonderful.
Yeah.
Whether that was 6 months or 3 years, whatever that was, we would just make every day she had left wonderful. But I still had to have the conversation with Celeste.
Of course.
And so then I sat down with Celeste and I said, hey, sweetie, this is the deal. The doctor called and she said that there's more spots. I said, if you want to fight this, we'll fight this. But if you feel like this is too hard, that's okay too. She's like, no, mommy, I want to fight this. I'm like, that's my little girl. The unfortunate part was we weren't given a plan.
Right.
And so we asked people to pray for her, and we were trying to figure out what is the next stage? What can we do next?
Right.
And she now was registered for high school, had just started her grade 9 year, and she started to have more pains. And by Christmas time, she wasn't feeling good at all. And I had this goal that I was going to finish the book, and I was getting really frustrated with myself. Like, why can't I finish this? I'm like, I usually set a goal. I'm going to do this. I couldn't finish the book. Well, she was now having headaches again, and the double vision was coming back. And the doctor said, okay, after Christmas, we'll do another MRI. So she got to have a lovely Christmas. She went to visit her family, her grandparents on her dad's side, and aunts and uncles and cousins. She had a lovely time. And when she came back, we went to the hospital to have our MRI. And her stepmom was with me when we went, and she's a neurologist,
Oh, wow.
or she was doing her internship
Uh-huh.
as a neurologist. And so Celeste had her MRI, and Michelle said she would stay with the neurologist. So I took Celeste to get a bone scan, and we're sitting up in this room and it's freezing. And all you ever do in the hospital is wait,
Right.
right?
So
So we're
true.
waiting, and she's laying on this table, and they put warm blankets on her. And they've even given me warm blankets because it's so cold in this room. And I'm sitting there, and Michelle sends me a text, and she says, "It doesn't look good." But I don't know what "it doesn't look good" means.
Right, of course.
So I simply turned to Celeste and I said, "Hey, sweetie, if you could do anything in the whole world, what would you do? If you could go anywhere, if you could meet anyone, if you could try anything new, if you could learn something, what would you do?" She said, "Oh, mommy, I want to go to Europe." She says, "I want to go to London, England, and see Big Ben. And I want to go to the Eiffel Tower in Paris and have pain au chocolat. And I want to go to the Leaning Tower of Pisa
Wow.
and in Italy. And I want to go to Switzerland and try Swiss chocolates." And so I'm writing all of these things down. She said, "I want Haley to come with us," because the girls have become so close.
Of course.
So I'm writing all of this down. And I'm like, "If you could meet anyone, sweetie, who would you want to meet?" She goes, "Robin Williams." So I write it down. I'm like, "Is there anyone else?" She goes, "Celine Dion." I'm like, "Okay, anyone else?" "Anne Hathaway." So I'm just right. And we're huge Doctor Who fans. We love the TV show out of England called Doctor Who.
Sure.
And so she always wanted to meet the cast of the Doctor Who
And
TV
she
show.
wants to
So
go
I've
to the
written all this
TARDIS,
down.
right?
Yeah. Yep. And so I then asked her, like, if you could try anything new, what would you want to try? And she said, well, she wanted to learn how to make Nanaimo bars. She wanted to go rock climbing. She wanted to try crab and shrimp, like different seafoods that she hadn't had before, lobster. And I'm
Right.
writing all these things down.
Yeah.
And then they finish the bone scan and we go back downstairs and the doctor sits down with us and she said, "I'm sorry, but there's so much cancer in her little body. We only expect her to live days or
Oh, God.
weeks."
Wow.
"You're not supposed to tell me I only have days left with my daughter."
Right.
But then I remembered, wait, I've already decided we're just going to make every day that she has wonderful.
Right.
So we messaged everybody we knew. We said, this is the deal. Celeste doesn't have much time left, but these are the things that she wants. And the doctor said because it was a brain tumor, she couldn't fly. So going to Europe was off the table.
Off the table, right?
So we told them, this is what Celeste wants. If you know anyone who knows anyone who can help us. And we told everyone we knew and all of her teenage friends.
Right.
And all of her siblings' friends. If you tell a whole bunch of teenagers.
Spread the word. Yep, spread the
word. They tweeted and emailed and messaged just everyone. So we're sitting in her dad's house a few days later. This Friday is when we got the diagnosis. On the Wednesday, we're sitting at her dad's house and the phone rings and this man calls asking for Celeste. And her stepmom answers the phone and he said, "Can I talk to Celeste?" And she's, "Well, can I ask who's calling? Like, who's this guy calling our daughter?" It was David Tennant.
Oh, David Tennant.
Yeah, from the Doctor Who TV show. And he was in Harry Potter as well.
Right.
And so Celeste is sitting at the kitchen table talking to David Tennant like she does this every day of her life. She's talking about spaghetti bolognese, about her favorite episodes. They're just having a wonderful chat. And the rest of us are in the hallway listening in on the extension, jumping up and down. Oh my goodness, David Tennant's on the phone.
Wow.
We were so excited. So that was Wednesday. Little did we know that somebody would go banging on doors in Salt Lake City and we got a Skype call from Robin Williams.
My God.
He had been on tour, and someone found out where he was on tour and got hold of him. And he Skyped from his hotel room.
Wow.
And he was amazing. And he said he just considered this an introduction. And he said, when I get off of tour, I want to call you again from my house in San Francisco so you can see the view of the bay and the seals that go by. And he starts barking like a seal. Like, this is real Robin Williams. It was amazing.
Fantastic.
And then the next day, someone went to Vegas and banged on doors until Celine Dion called Celeste, told her that she loved her, and dedicated that evening's performance to Celeste.
Oh my God.
And then friends of ours who are in theater got hold of their friends in Hollywood. And Anne Hathaway called, Skyped with Celeste for 45 minutes.
Oh my God.
They talked about everything, all of their favorite things in common. Celeste told Annie about the dress that she wore for her grade 8 grad that we made out of ties, because she loved to wear a tie. So we made a whole dress out of ties.
Oh my goodness.
She told her about Granddad, who hosts soup parties every winter. So he invites all of his friends over. They all bring a big pot of soup, and my dad will make 8 different types of soups himself, and cheeses and wines and breads. And it's this incredible party. And so Celeste is telling Annie all about it. And Annie was just like, that's amazing. So if you ever hear that they're having soup parties in Hollywood or New York, where she has a place, that she learned it from Celeste.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, I learned it from Celeste now too.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable. Wow.
And so we're on this call with Annie, and my son Conlon walks into the room, and he says, how do we know you are who you say you are? And she's like, but what do I need to do to prove it? And he says, sing to us.
Oh my God.
Because we had just seen her in Les Mis.
Right.
And we, of course, have watched her in Princess Diaries and Ella Enchanted.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, what do you want me to sing? And he said, Somebody to Love, the Queen song that she sings in Ella Enchanted. So she did. She sang for us. It was just amazing.
Wow, what special people. Because you know why? She was a special girl.
Yeah. What I learned was that people are amazing, and that if you ask for help, people will bend over backwards to help. People are absolutely amazing. The things that they did for my little girl, things that I couldn't do myself for her, but people just went out of their way to make miracles happen for her.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Wow. So, of course, tell us what happened next.
So that same weekend that we found out that Celeste's cancer was terminal, we had a minister from our church. And he said, sometimes there are spirits that are so sweet and so special that God has to call them home. And it really made me think about my little girl, that I knew I had a special little girl, but when I thought about it even more carefully, I realized I had a little girl who struggled when she saw people being mean to each other. She just took that really hard. When her brothers would put on X-Men or Lord of the Rings, any of those type of movies, she'd go, Mommy, I can't watch that. And she would leave the room.
Wow.
And 1 month before this was when the Sandy Hook shooting happened in Sandy Hook, Connecticut.
Right.
And the day that happened, I haven't had cable television in like 30 years. And so I don't normally watch the news. And that particular day, I went to the bank to pick up a check. And most of the time you go to pick up a check, you pick it up and you leave.
Right.
Well, I get there and they can't find my check. And they're like, could you please wait over here in this room with a big screen TV? And that's all that was on the news,
Yeah.
was the shooting.
Yeah. It
And
was so terrible.
I was captive. I couldn't go anywhere. And I'm just watching in horror. I immediately picked up my phone and canceled all of my appointments for the rest of the day. I called up my father and I said, would you please meet me at our favorite restaurant? And he met me there, and the two of us just cried. We cried for those families. We cried because we knew what they were about to go through.
Yes. Yes.
30 years earlier, my mother and my sister and I, we were driving to the East Coast to Canada in her little Chevette. And we were hit by an oncoming transport truck. And when the car spun out of control and landed on the side of the road, I called out, and someone pulled me out of the wreckage and took me inside of a house. And that was the last time that I saw my mom and my sister alive.
Wow. We've heard, we spoke before, and I know this part of the story, about your mom and your daughter, your sister, and the tragedies that you've come through in your life, and to see you the way you are now, it's just a testament to you and to your faith in God. It's unbelievable. And then you told me something when we spoke about your mom and your sister and about your daughter. But before we get there, tell us about your daughter. We have to, they need to know what happened.
Yeah. So when we saw what was happening with Sandy Hook, we knew the pain they were about to go through in losing a child, losing a sibling, losing a mother. We knew what they were about to go through. And that's when I had this realization that if this is the world that we live in today, I could see God looking down at my little girl and saying, little girl, you don't need to stay in this world anymore. You can come home now. Because for her to see all that's happening in the world as it is today would have broken her heart over and over and over again.
Right.
And I finally realized this was a blessing to her. She didn't have to do this anymore. She could go home.
Right.
And we ended up having 6 weeks with her before she passed. And in that time, Celeste was perfectly prepared to go. She said to me, Mommy, I just want to go peacefully in my sleep. And I'm like, that's fine, sweetie. I didn't want her to be in pain. And so when she would say goodnight, she would also say goodbye every night. And then she'd wake up the next morning and go, Mommy, why didn't I get to go yet?
Wow. What is that humor for this stuff?
And I'm like, I don't know, sweetie, but I guess it's just one more day.
Right.
And there was one night when she said to me, she said, Mommy, I'm going to miss you. And I said to her, I'm going to miss you too, sweetie. But there's something you need to know. That everything that I learned about being a mommy, I learned from my mommy. And unlike other grandmothers who can sometimes be old and crotchety, Nana Joy was only 38 when she passed. And for Celeste, I look just like my mom, and I sound just like my mom.
Wow.
And I knew for Celeste, it was going to be like she was going from one mommy to another mommy. And I knew she was going to be in the best hands possible. I could completely trust my mom to take care of my little girl on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, we had this conversation before, as I said earlier, and it really resonated with me. And you told me something. You asked me, you knew I'm Jewish, and you asked me about my feelings about, coming back to life. When Messiah comes, or whoever, and my feelings about that. And I said, we believe that as well, that, we'll be back. And you said something very interesting, and I'd like for you to share that,
Sure.
what you talked about there,
So
because it was so, so profound.
one of the beliefs that I have is, one of the comforts that I've had is knowing that one day we will all be resurrected, that we will be reunited with God, and we will be resurrected. But when that day comes, we won't be when we come to this earth, the reason we come to this earth is to get a body. But we don't come to get a 3-year-old body or a 14-year-old body. We come to get a fully adult body. So if we're resurrected and we'll have an adult body, but if we died when we were 3, that body still has to grow up.
Mhm.
And I had always, because in losing my mom and my little sister, I've had lots of years to think about this and realized, okay, one day my mom and my little sister will be resurrected, and my little sister will be 7 years old. She still needs to grow up. And my mom will have the blessing of still being able to raise my little sister. And I've always been a little bit jealous that my mom would have that opportunity to have that extra time with my sister, watching her grow up.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But now I realize that when I'm reunited with my daughter and we are resurrected, she'll still be 14. And I will still have the opportunity to raise her. And I'll be doing that at the same time that my mom is raising my sister.
Right. And I'll be doing
We
it at
get
the
to
same
do
time
all that together. Isn't
that I
that
did watch
amazing?
my parents raise my brother.
Yeah.
You gave me so much comfort with that time we spoke, that it stayed with me till now, till when we're speaking again. It was a few weeks ago, but it gave me comfort that I never thought about before. So
Mhm.
thank you for that.
You're welcome. And all those mothers
Yeah.
who have lost their children, those blessings will not be denied them, that opportunity. And I'm going to give you just a little more. Think about this. When that day happens, we'll be surrounded by our ancestors and their collective brilliance and insights and knowledge and support.
Right.
Not only will I be raising my daughter, but I will have the collective support of all of my grandmothers and great grandmothers to guide
Beautiful.
me in doing that and loving me and my daughter through that.
So beautiful. So beautiful.
The possibilities with families is just amazing.
Yes. Yes, it is. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. So now, you had your daughter for 6 more weeks, and then hopefully she didn't wake up. She got what she wished for.
Mhm.
Because we all, obviously at this point, we all understand that that's the end of the story for Celeste.
Yeah.
In this world. Let me put it that way. For now. Okay.
Let me tell you one more thing. So when I was having those conversations with Celeste, and she said, "Mommy, I'm going to miss you." And I let her know she was going to be with Nana Joy. And I said, "Well, you need to understand that over the years, I have felt my mother close to me. I have literally felt her hands on my shoulders. I have heard her whisper in my ear. I knew." So then I was able to let Celeste know, "You'll be able to do the exact same thing." I said, this is not the end of our relationship.
Right.
We will she'll still be able to communicate with me. And I said to now, Nana Joy puts her hands on my shoulders. So don't do that, because then I'll confuse the two of you. I said, you find another way to let me know that you're there. And I have felt her rub my back. And I know that her little brother has felt it too.
Wow. Beautiful. Really beautiful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you've taken these things, these stories, and now you're helping others, right?
Mhm.
So tell us a little about that. We've had a long time here. Your story has been so important. And not 1 second I would want to miss. So thank you for the whole story. But tell me, how do you now help others going through this? Because that's where we started
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
our
So,
conversation.
so um, that book that I wanted to write and have finished by December 2012, I then realized the story wasn't done yet. That's why I wasn't supposed to finish it in 2012.
Because she wasn't ready to go yet. She wasn't ready
Yeah,
to put the end of the story yet.
yeah, yeah. So, but when she passed, that was what got me out of bed every day. It was literally what got me out of the bed, was realizing I need to write this book, that I couldn't wallow in self-pity. I couldn't be crippled by the grief, that I needed to tell her story. And it became a cathartic healing process for me to be able to write it all down and put it all together and have a focus on what I was going to do. And so then I was able to finish the book and tell that last chapter of her story. And then I learned there's one thing to write a book, it's another thing to publish a book, and it's a third thing to market a book.
That's right.
Completely.
That's right.
And
So
so then,
very
like,
true.
well, how do I tell the world about this book? And realize there was so many things that I learned in finishing the book up. It became the story of Celeste and the story of Haley. It became the relationship that I built with Haley's mom,
Lori.
Lori, and all the things that we learned and we did to support each other. And then what were all the lessons that we learned that could help other families? And so then I broke it down to 5 things: reach out and connect, reflect, express, and love.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Reach out, connect, reflect,
Express
express, and
and
love.
love.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So then it became about, okay, well, what else can we do? And I realized I wanted to interview a whole bunch of experts and ask them what their best advice was for cancer moms, for cancer families. And so I interviewed Dr. Bernie Siegel and Dr. Sue Morter, Marcy Scheimoff, Dr. Adam McLeod, Dr. Jeff McCowage, and I did a virtual summit. But being a foundling, starting, going, we got some nice engagement, but I'm like, we can still do more with this. And so now we're repurposing all of those interviews are now coming out as podcast episodes.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Right. And one of the things we talked about is my sister's cancer center that she started here. And I'm going to connect you with her because she's doing fantastic work and she's helping a lot of people there as well.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Yeah.
it's just a bit fantastic. Everything happens for a reason. I believe it.
Mhm.
So now you wrote your book. What's it called?
It's called Two Mothers, One Prayer: Facing Your Child's Cancer with Hope, Strength, and Courage.
Beautiful. Fantastic. So once we have this video up, this YouTube up, we'll put in the notes below it a link to be able to get that book and a link to contact you, because your mission now is to help other mothers and fathers or whatever get
Mhm.
through this difficult time, no matter what the end result is, for them to understand that their fear is all based on lack of knowledge,
Mhm.
right? And if you understand that, you'll if you understand what fear is, it's darkness. And it's about turning on the light to be able to
Mhm.
see through the darkness and get yourself through it.
Yeah, exactly. It
So
is.
thank you so much for being here with me today. I cried so much. I used 5 or 6 tissues, as you knew I would, because of the subject matter, because of our connection that we have of losing family members at young ages, your sister, your mother, your daughter, my brother, and we were able to connect on it. And I told you my story from before of how I allowed it to put me into the wrong side of it, and over the last 10 years come out to the right side of it and understand
Mhm.
I have a lot to give and you have a lot to give. And it's about not rolling up into a ball and saying the world is terrible and I'm just going to, give up. And we both saw through this, our lives, that the world is as we want to see it. And we want to see it great. And, you know, my thing is the warrior's life coded. Your daughter was a warrior, and she is a warrior. She's up there in heaven with
Yep.
God, watching over you, and she's a warrior. She's with my brother. She's with your mom, your sister, and my father, everybody. And they're down there, they're watching us, and they're telling us, the more you worry, the more it won't happen. So don't be a worrier, be a warrior. And you found that out, and you didn't do anything about it. You, as soon as you realized that things were not looking good, you said, I'm going to make these last days the best I could. And you filled it with people she wanted to meet and people she aspired to know. And she got what she wanted. So, good for you. Kudos to you. And thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you, Martin.
Okay, so everybody, thank you again. This will, please put some comments below. Reach out to Laura. Let her know what you're thinking. Let her know your feelings. If you know somebody who could be helped by her, click on it. Send them this video. Let them know that the YouTube channel here is for helping people in whatever way. Today it's about this. Tomorrow it can be something else. But it's all about the same thing, help and love. So thanks so much, and have a great day.